All right, girls, today we are beginning adolescence and the development of the adolescent child. So, adolescence starts with the physical beginnings of sexual maturity, so puberty, and ends with social achievement of independent adult status. So, girls, obviously, you all are in the stage of adolescence right now. And since it technically does not end, according to psychologists, until people really gain that independent adult status, meaning they're living on their own, paying for their own stuff, all that good stuff, not relying on their parents or anyone else anymore. A lot of people sometimes get stuck in adolescence past the age of 18. So we're going to move through adolescence just like we did childhood. We're going to begin with physical development, cognitive development, and then social development. So with physical development, I do want you to know, and we've talked about this before, the average age for girls to start puberty now in menarche is the scientific term for your first period is at 11. The average age is 11 years old. Boys are later, they start puberty around 13. We talked about how all of the hormones that we've put in our food has caused puberty to hit earlier than in previous generations. It used to be not even 20 years ago that girls would start puberty around 13 and 14, and boys would be around 15. So, really, what I want you to know about physical development, this is taking you back to family life in fifth grade. You do always have your primary sex characteristics. You're born with those. Your ovaries and your genitals are always there. But at puberty, your secondary sex characteristics start to appear. Hair, breasts, deepening of the voice for boys. We all know this, but what I really wanted to focus on for physical development of adolescence is the psychological status behind it. And I'd like you to think about your own development in middle school and going through puberty and see if you would agree with this. So psychologists say that the physical maturation of girls and boys is very different psychologically. It's almost exactly the opposite. Early maturing boys are perceived as leaders, self-assured, confident, and popular. The boys who hit puberty earlier tend to have more self-confidence. They feel good about themselves, and they are well liked in school. It does tend to be the opposite, and this was done, the study has been done countless times for surveys on kids going through puberty, that early maturing girls tend to feel the opposite. Oftentimes they feel teased, a subject of jealousy, and it's the late maturing girls that seem to be more popular, specifically with the other girls because they aren't seen as a threat. So it's those early maturing girls that tend to have a tough time when the early maturing boys psychologically, I guess, benefit from going through puberty earlier. So that's all we really need to talk about physical development for adolescents. If you need a crash course from me on what happens at puberty, I will be more than happy to give you that in private. So let's move on to the cognitive development. We know that prefrontal cortex is still developing your higher level thinking, decision making, that if I do this, then this is going to happen thinking. Piaget will say that kids and adolescents are in your formal operational stage of thinking. You're now able to do math problems, think logically. You're starting to think out of the box. But really, where we see cognitive development in these ages, girls, is the development of your moral thinking. Remember, during adolescence, Erickson says that you are searching for an identity, and kids from the ages of 7 to 18 are really starting to look at themselves and trying to form their own identity and values. So, the psychologist who outlined the stages of moral thinking for us, his name was Kohlberg, and he gave us 3 different stages of morality thinking. And you are going to start focusing on this when you ask questions to your adolescent participants in our study. So what Kohlberg said, girls, is that people do things at certain ages and they make decisions really based on their conventional stages of moral thinking. And there are 3. So Kohlberg says that before the age of 9, children are in a pre-conventional stage of thinking, that they do everything and they make decisions based on the desire to avoid punishment or get a reward. If you offer a kid a cookie or a quarter to do something, they usually will do it, especially before the age of 9. They want to get a reward or they want to avoid timeout. They're not really understanding and thinking about whether things are right or wrong. They're just hoping not to get punished and hoping to be rewarded in some way. Now, in the middle of adolescence, we are going to move to what Kohlberg calls the conventional stage of morality. We do what is right because that's the rule or the law. Or we don't want people to think we're bad, like our teachers or our friends. Children and adolescents will usually just do what's right because they don't want to get in trouble and they know that's what they're supposed to do. Or the opposite, they do what's wrong because maybe that's the identity that they're forming right then. They do it specifically so they can break the rule or break the law. Now, once children mature and go through adolescence, and sometimes girls, adults never get to the post-conventional stage, but Kohlberg and Erickson will say that once you have gone through your identity crisis and you really figure out who you are, you hit the post-conventional stage of moral development. You've developed a set of personal ethics. Really, girls, this seems to appear only in societies that value individualism. But once you find your true identity, you can think outside of the box. Maybe certain rules or laws should be broken or should not be followed. And you've developed your own set of personal ethics and values and morals. And sometimes you break the rules or you break the laws because they need to be broken. So in your questions that you're going to ask your people, you have a dilemma that you're going to present to them. It's called the Heinz dilemma, and it goes right or wrong along with Kohlberg's stages of moral thinking. And here's a graph that's from your book that shows you exactly what the different levels look like. So you're going to present your people with the Heinz dilemma. It's a story about a man who needs to find medication for his wife who's dying of an illness. And it's really, you're asking them whether he should steal it or not. So I want you to record their answers and then we'll come back and visit the different stages of morality, specifically when we get into adulthood and that level 3 post-conventional stage of morality is hit. So we talked a little bit about Erik Erikson. We know that the task for adolescence is the search for identity. During this stage of life, your crisis is to go through the identity crisis. And once you figure out what your identity is, then you can form close, intimate, emotional relationships. So really, during the identity crisis, you need to get a clear, unique definition of yourself with goals, values, and plans for the future. And here's your chart again. Let's go ahead and we'll stop there for today, and you will do your research, and then we will come back and visit more social development later.